Hello there, thank you for staying with us and welcome to another edition of Channels Beam on Channels Television. I'm Victor Matthias. Now, the approval for the deployment of the 5G network in Nigeria by the Federal Executive Council brought back memories of debates that took place when the idea was first mooted. Issues ranging from health effects of the new technology to conspiracies about the COVID-19 virus were spread. Now, this led the Senate earlier this year to urge the federal government to ensure it does its due diligence before approving its deployment. So on this edition of the program, we would be looking at the pros, the cons of the new technology, the equipment to be used in transmission, the affordability, and the possible health effects. And joining us to look at this, we have Kendall Anai. He is joining us via Zoom. He is the founder of Tizeti Networks, which operates as wifi.com.ng. He has over 17 years experience in telecommunication and information technology, where he leverages wireless, large bandwidth, and plummeting cost of solar panels to create a low capex and opex network of owned and operated towers to offer disruptive customer-friendly pricing for unlimited internet. It's a pleasure to have you on the program. We also have Tony Iwakalo. He is an environmental biologist by discipline and a mineral and mining consultant and the CEO of Soundcore Group. He has gathered experience in various areas of professional endeavors and is a science enthusiast as well as an ardent lover of knowledge. He also joins us via Zoom from Abuja. It's a pleasure to have you both on the program today.
Thank you.
Afternoon, everyone.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Of course. Again, thanks once again. But Kendall kicks out this conversation for us. I mean, so much has been said about the benefits, that one would enjoy if or when eventually this technology is deployed. But give us a bird's view eye of what one would be seeing when this eventually comes to place.
Sure. When 5G comes to place, the speeds that we're used to, which is 5 to 10 Mbps, will be looking at speeds as 100 times that. So most of our complaints of low speed would pretty much go away. And with that would usher in a number of applications. If you look at the way with 4G, you had things like Uber. With 5G, you now have things like driverless cars. With 4G, when you were thinking about telemedicine in a little way, in 5G, you would now be able to do remote-aided surgeries. You will actually have to take the advantage of the doctor can talk to you, to prescribe and all of that. And then you have things like access anywhere you want. You'll be accessing internet anywhere you are. There's more penetration of broadband across the country. And then you even have things like proliferation of fiber, access to internet over satellite. So 5G is a whole basket of technologies that will come to play, and the benefits are going to be mind-blowing. You also have things, connected devices. So where you only had your smartphone or your TV or your smart TV, you're going to have things like your smart glasses, phones, watch, IoT. Almost everything will be connected. Even as simple funny things like your fridge too will be connected to the internet. Thank you.
All right, now, so it's good that you made mention of all of these things that will be connected. So IoT pretty much is what you're looking at. But as it is now, IoT would be created with a lack of security. I mean, that is also going to be, one of the things that people would be scared of. For instance, now you talked about the driverless cars. I'm in my car. The car owner knows where I am. He knows my movement. I mean, how do I secure myself when I'm using some of these, appliances, your fridge, your home, your cars? I mean, security is very key in this era that we're in. So isn't that going to be a problem?
Sure. And even for 5G is even going to be a lot more important, because right now internet is slow. So if anybody tries to access your network, there's only little they can do, because obviously they could get cut off from the internet itself. But when you now have capacity that is 100 times, there's a lot more any of your devices at home can form part of a botnet and all that. So security is at the heart of it, and it's one of the objectives of the 5G plan too, to ensure that everything is secure, because most of the networks now is moving from being hardware to software-defined networks, and software has more vulnerabilities. So part of what the operators will be doing is ensure that the software that they're implementing to actually in the 5G core will be very secure. And you as an individual too, the customer premise equipments themselves too would have stronger firewalls than we typically have. things that we take for granted, like the password, the Wi-Fi password, everything will be encrypted end to end. You already have that. There's an announcement last week on WhatsApp. That's pretty much what you have. The phone calls over 5G will all be encrypted so that a hacker can't, because you can imagine what a hacker can do. You're driving your car and someone has access to it, can cause an accident and all of that. But security is at the core of 5G, even the standards too. The 3GPP has also put in place a lot of security protocols and standards to ensure that it's really secure.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring in the 3GPP, but let me just hold you there for a bit. Let me quickly bring in Tony Wakalo into this conversation. Tony, again, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. Kendall has pretty much, run us through some of the benefits and also a little bit of concerns that have been raised by a lot of people, but that's on security basis. Another stream of concerns have been flowing from the fact that, the health effects that will follow due to the deployment of this technology. But in your own perspective, is there any of that, even though the federal government has says nothing of that would be in place? But I mean, what is your own, what would you say are possible health effects if this technology is eventually deployed?
Thank you, Victor, for having me. This subject of the 5G deployment, especially looking at it from a biological and environmental perspective strictly. I think what we need to understand clearly is 5G is in 3 bands. There's the low band, there's the mid band, and there's the high band. I think we should be more focused on the millimeter waves. Low band 5G is almost the same frequencies as the 4G. Mid band, I think, is between 24.5 gigahertz, I think, or 24 to 40 gigahertz. I'm not sure now. But what is most critical is the millimeter waves, which is 60 gigahertz. The graph I saw pop up on the screen shows the attenuation of oxygen and H2O at specific EHF bandwidths. But we're not expecting. Yeah, that's the one I was referring to. So I try to explain this to those who probably are not too familiar with radiation and physics. Attenuation really means reduction of flux. Something is taking off the intensity. So if you look clearly at H2O, you see a point where there's a crest, right? Less than 100. It means at that particular frequency, H2O is attenuated, and that is why we can use what we have as microwaves. Microwave is just at that particular frequency, which is approved when you put your food in, it starts to heat up the water inside the food. So the next frequency on that graph is actually O2. And that is at 60 gigahertz, which is a millimeter wave. Now, at 60 gigahertz, when you have attenuation of oxygen, what happens is the amount of oxygen within that cell area. If, of course, when you're doing high frequency 5G, you're going to be using the cells and the antennas for highly dense areas. What happens is the radiation produced by those radio waves eventually starts to take out the oxygen from the atmosphere, which is what the attenuation is. So you find that you have adverse effects on wildlife, on humans, and over time, obviously, with the lack of oxygen for plant and animal life. The way the biological organisms are set up, they don't die immediately. They die in doses, they die over time. But if you continue to deplete the environment of oxygen at 60 gigahertz, let's be specific. So people come out and say 5G is safe. Yes, it is safe, but at 60 gigahertz, because of the attenuation of oxygen, that is where the problem is.
All right, let me quickly come back to Kendall. Kendall, as it is now, Tony is saying that this is going to be in phases. What phase are we going to be deploying, or what phase did the federal government approve at the moment? And at what gigahertz would we be pushing out the millimeter the waves?
Everything is so the refarming, replanning of the lower band below 6 gigahertz is where the focus is on today. So that's shown that it's been deployed around the world. There are no issues with it. And even the high band that Mr. Tony is talking about too, because the transmission distance of those frequencies is really short, the issues that you think you will get will not actually be as prominent at those levels. The equipment that's been deployed around the world in higher frequency bands don't go beyond 300 meters. And 300 meters is really, it's not even that far when you think about the distances that we typically would have with telecoms equipment here, 3 kilometers. We're talking about 1/10 the value. So it's been proven to be safe across the world. So whether it's the low band, mid band, and the high band, you don't have those issues as you would expect. Oxygen absorbs it. There's, in fact, for 60 gigahertz, even as close as a piece of paper can block the beam. So because of all the things that can attenuate it when it leaves the base station where it's connected to. So it's not as bad as from the point of view of the transmission distances. It's not as bad. It doesn't go 300 meters. It tapers down to almost nothing. That's why you see the band goes really steep. It drops off really steep when you look at the graph. And then for us, what is obviously the first phase of everything is below 6 gigahertz, which is low band, which is already being used. So the only difference is they're just repanning. It's the same frequencies that we're already used to in 4G, from everything below 6 gigahertz down. And so it's just a case of they're making the bands fatter so that you can transmit a lot more data across it.
All right. So I mean, if we look at the how would I put it now, the way we space our bands, or our what's it called again, the masts now, which I believe is what would be used. You know, the gap in between a map and another map and a mast, I beg your pardon, and another one seems to be pretty much wide. So how are we going to bridge that gap?
Good question. So you would now need to have smaller cells, and if you look at the 5G plan, it's a case of saying, hey, we're using smaller cells, so we have to have a lot more attachment points. And it's similar to what we already use with Wi-Fi, where we have a number of access points. Wi-Fi doesn't go beyond 50 meters, but we're able to create a network of a large network in an urban area, right? So you now have a situation where people would use not the towers that you're used to, but maybe things like rooftops that obviously at a closer level and reduce the distance we'll be transmitting to the customers to be able to achieve that. And then one of the good things about 5G and how to implement it is most of these things will be connected by fiber. And so there will be an increase in the density, in the number of kilometers of fiber across an urban areas to actually connect those points. So you even gain a lot because you'll now be eliminating the long microwave links that were connecting those towers, since you'll be using Wi-Fi. So net effect will even be less wireless. If you think of it that okay, most of the backhauls will be fiber, and fiber is way better when it comes to transmitting data.
All right, Tony. I mean, like Kendall is trying to say now, this technology has been tested in other parts of the world. Has there been any preliminary tests that you know of in Nigeria that has been carried out to ensure that these harmful concerns that are being raised by people, would be eliminated?
I'm not aware that. Just to agree with what the other speaker said, yes, there's not been any issues, because I think the most widely accepted band is 24.25 to 29.5 gigahertz. Now, the millimeter waves, I think, the EHF frequencies is between 30 and 300, which means that most of what has been done is still under the millimeter wave band. And basically, the reason why it's called a millimeter wave is because the wavelength is usually between 1 and 10 millimeters. Really, that's what it is. But coming back to the issue of safety, I'm not disagreeing with what he has said. I'm only saying, and I still continue to say, unless tests are run on the effect of radiation on small cells in densely populated areas on flora and fauna, I haven't seen one. Unless something like that is done that we have seen, I would not, the information available to me, I'm still a bit weary about 60 gigahertz millimeter waves. Let me just put it that way.
Tony, you were expressing your concerns about deploying this in densely populated areas. Lagos State is one of those. And Kendall is saying that as it is, fiber will be used. I mean, if you look at the fact that we have issues, around right of way and even the costs and all of that, how feasible do you think this is going to be in a place like Lagos, first of all, before you even begin to move to other places? And put in mind that, the cost of right of way in Lagos is different from what it costs in, say, Kaduna or in Yobe and in other parts of the country. So as we begin the rollouts, how feasible do you see this happening?
Okay. Just a little bit, just to take him back when he talked about the test. Actually, tests were carried out in Nigeria. So the regulators actually had a pilot, 5G pilot with MTN across 6 cities. And the results showed that basically it was far below ICNIRP specification for protection of members of users. So they tested low band and even 24 gigahertz, right? But in terms of the backhaul, so the backhaul is what connects the different G-node Bs for 5G, or the way the public will understand it as access points, will be a lot of fiber. A lot of fiber is already being run. There's a project actually that the state government commissioned, that is a PPP, where
which state government? Kendall, which state government?
Lagos State. Sorry, Lagos State. Lagos State, right? Where you saw there was a lot of digging along the side of the roads. That project progressed significantly, and there's a lot more right of way, and it's one where they are digging once, and anybody can apply to use it pretty much, and you can run dark fiber to any location. So there's a lot that has been done in Lagos. Then if you look at other state governments too, Ogun State, where we have coverage, Edo State, there's coverage. There's a lot of metro fiber in those other 2 states. And I think Ekiti State even came up with a policy that really drastically dropped the cost of right of way. So there's a lot going on in the background. But the thing about infrastructure and telecoms is you don't necessarily see it in the front end from the customer point of view. But there's a lot going on, because even beyond the 5G, just the fact of what has happened in the last 1 year, where people are working from home, a lot of providers like myself had to deal with the massive surge in internet capacity. So in our case, where at the beginning of the pandemic, where we're delivering 100,000 gigs a day, and it took us almost 6 years to get to that, that number has almost doubled in 1 year. So even beyond the 5G, people had to start looking at other alternatives for backhaul, and fiber being one of the more trusted ones. There will still be a little bit of wireless in places where you can't reach, where maybe there's no road infrastructure there and all of that. But really, today there's about 2 companies that you can call up, and maybe 40 to 50% of Lagos, and you can get fiber to your home. So it's not as bad as you think, but the cost is offset by the number of people that you can then access once you run the fiber to that location. For us in Lagos, TZD had about at least 70 to 80% of our towers today are already connected with fiber. It's not obvious, but these are the things that happened in the background. So, thanks.
All right. Again, Tony, let me again bring this to you. The question initially was for you. Looking at how densely populated Lagos is, and like Kendall said, it's already happening. But at the same time, we need to remove those fears fully, so that when and if and when it is deployed, the minds of people would be calm. Looking at how everywhere is, looking at how space is pretty much a problem in Lagos. Of course, some areas we saw where they dug and they placed those fiber cables. Are you satisfied with the level that we are, or with the level of infrastructure that we've deployed to ensure that we remove the concerns that have been raised as regards health? Tony, if you can hear me, that was for you. I think your mic is on mute.
Before I answer that, yes, I've unmuted it, sorry about that. Before I answer that, I'd like to just point out something very critically. It'll be nice for MTN to share with us, or with the concerned public, the results of their tests and over what period those tests were carried out on flora and fauna. It'll be important, and it'll be important to be very specific on what bandwidths, which is what frequencies were used to run those tests. I'm not arguing that it wasn't done, but it'd be interesting to see the results of those tests that were carried out. That's on the one hand. In terms of your question as regards the efficiency of the fiber cables being run and vis-a-vis how that would affect health and those types of things. I think the cost-benefit analysis, first of all, will be done for any project. So I want to believe that, just as my colleagues, this other speaker has said, you know, we also, when during the COVID-19 lockdown, they were still running those fiber cables across Lagos. I was in Lagos at the time, so I know that there's the resource to deploy the cables and to get 5G running is there. However, my concern is not really deploying the 5G with the low and mid band. I keep saying that. That's 24 to 29.5 gigahertz, which is what has been released most parts of the world. Is not a millimeter wave, though it's 5G. I'd like us to just, anytime we're talking about health-related issues, just look at the specific frequencies that have challenges, like 60 gigahertz. Maybe because of my understanding of physics, I look at these things slightly differently because I understand radiation properly. But, like I said, the issue I think we should focus on is the health benefits of this, the adverse health effects, rather, when a millimeter wave like 60 gigahertz is run through such fiber optic cables. I don't know, I'm not an IT expert, I'm a biologist, so I know what happens in a biological organism when it's hit with radiation over long periods. So I might not be able to speak like my colleague on the authority of, oh, this has been done, it's safe. I know what I'll be looking for in such a report, so I cannot say there'll be any adverse health effects, because right now we're not at that point where we are deploying 60 gigahertz millimeter wave. So reasonably, I think that it will be effective in terms of smart cities and all the other things Lagos is trying to do and the other states that are getting involved, but we cannot be talking about health issues just yet.
All right, Tony Wakala, environmental biologist. I have to say thank you to you for joining us on the program, as well as Kendall Anai. Thanks as well, founder of Tizeti, for joining us on the program. Kendall, I mean, you confirmed that, you know, the tests were carried out. Perhaps you would share the results of that test with us. Oh, fantastic.
So just to add to, it's online on the NCC's website. The NCC is very transparent. They have a ton of information there. I'm even looking at it as we're speaking right now. So the information is out there on what they're doing. And yes, and a lot of levels of engagement have been done. They've had town halls, the House of Reps has debated it, and up until the point. So they went extensively through all kinds of steps. It involves a lot of experts on it till they get to the stage where they give approval for it last week. So I don't want us to rehash and keep going backwards on all of that. But yeah, thank you.
Of course, thanks to you, and thanks to Tony as well. Well, this is a continuing conversation, and of course, we'll still be back to look at it when it eventually is rolled out in the country. But that's where we are on this. We'll now take a look at the most viewed videos on our YouTube channel in the past week.
The confession of those behind the kidnap and subsequent death of the father of former Plateau State Governor Joshua Dariye kicks off this week's charts.
He wants us, which he look around the community, the youth are unemployed, so we should kidnap him so that we got a ransom.
It is followed by the reactions to the military coup in Guinea and release of former Libyan President Muammar Gaddafi's son. Third spot is taken by Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike, maintaining that impunity is a factor contributing to the insecurity in Nigeria.
What are those factors that have led to this insecurity? One of such factors, as far as I'm concerned, is impunity.
The mind-blowing revelations by a former naval intelligence chief that government knows sponsors and perpetrators of Boko Haram attacks is in second place. While topping the charts is the visit by President Buhari to Imo State.
Well, Imo State Exco Complex and commissioned by me. Thank you very much.
Well, there you go. Those were the movie videos on our YouTube channel in the past week. And that's where we wrap it up on the show. Thank you for watching. I'm Victor Matthias.